Welcome to Allegiant Stretch. My name is Tim. Today I'm going to be your coach. We're going to have 3 phases of this workout. We're going to open up with 1, CARs, or controlled articular rotation. This is active range of motion, trying to increase our mobility from our neck down to our toes as much as possible. Then we're going to transition into the flexibility, or the passive range of motion. We're going to utilize a concept of progressive angular isometric loading or regressive angular isometric loading, aka PAILs and rails. Then we'll finish off with some breathing to reset that diaphragm, to get a little bit more into that parasympathetic tone, to hopefully aid recovery as well as improve our performance within the weight room. In this workout, you're probably going to need 2 things. 1, a yoga block if you have one. If you don't have one, don't worry. A towel will do just fine. And a stopwatch. And this is contingent upon if you're not going to watch the video entirely. I'm just going to give you the cliff notes. And if you just want to do this on your own, a stopwatch or anything where you can track time will help. So we're going to open up with CARs. Again, controlled articular rotations, working on neck all the way down to toe. Take you through step by step. We're going to do this for time instead of for reps. So you're thinking quality, not quantity. Get as many quality reps as you can in the quantity. All right, let's open up with neck. Find a good base position, feet hip width apart, nice, steady, strong position to move. Let's go ahead, bring that chin down towards your chest, rotate towards your left shoulder, drop the ear, circle all the way around, bringing that ear to the opposite shoulder, rotate, bring it back to the start. We're going to continue in that direction for 30 seconds, and then I'll let you guys know when to switch. Thinking about making that circle as big as you can, 1 mile per hour, trying to rotate through as much of a range of motion as you can. If you feel any pain when you get to that closing angle or that small angle side, just simply go through a little less range of motion. Once you get to the start, reverse directions. Now we're going the opposite direction, just going 1 mile per hour, trying to make that circle as big as you can through each rotation as you can. You might find you have a little bit more range or a little bit more fluidity with movement, one way versus the other. That's normal. We are naturally asymmetrical, meaning we have a difference from left to right. This is why we put so much emphasis on unilateral movements within our program. When you finish this rep, go ahead, relax. We're going to move it down the spine. Give yourself a little bear hug. We're going to bring our chest down towards the ground. We're going to rotate towards your left, drop your left shoulder, circle all the way around. When you get to the start, keep going in that same direction, 1 mile per hour. Try to make that circle as big as you possibly can. Circle all the way around. Remember, if you feel a pain in that closing angle side, aka the small side, that means we have a little bit of an impingement going on. We just want to take a little bit of range of motion off. If you feel a lot of pain, you may need to stop entirely. But as we're going through this, try to explore as much space as you can. Finish the rep that you're currently on. Let's reverse direction. Going 1 mile per hour. Try to make that circle as big as you possibly can. Locking in that joint above, which would be your neck, and that joint below, which would be your hip. Only thing moving is your entire spinal column from your tailbone to the bottom of your neck. And finish the rep that you're currently on, and we'll come back to the start. Now we're going to go arms out in front, closed fist, because we want to isolate that scapula. Now we're going to retract our shoulder blades back, elevate your shoulder blades up, push your shoulder blades forward, bring your shoulder blades down. If this is backwards, we're going to keep going backwards for 30 seconds. So this one direction, retract, elevate, protract, depress, and keep circling forward. Imaginary shelf our hands are sitting on, so our hands can go forward and back, but we want to avoid them going up and down. Finish the rep that you're currently on, get back to the start, now we'll reverse. Protract, elevate, retract, depress. Now we're moving a forward circle. Again, hands forward and back, not up and down. 1 mile per hour here. Take your time. Try to make that circle as big as you can. You'll notice you'll get a little fatigued in that mid and upper back. This just means that we're moving through a little bit more of a range or more focus than we normally do, which is all natural. As we go through this, you might find a crampy sensation. That just means we're entering ranges that we're not accustomed to, and your body's trying to find a way to either accommodate that range or maybe possibly get out of it. These are now potential that we're adding into it. So the more comfort we get at that range, the better we're gonna be at that range. I'm gonna move on to shoulder. Let's go left side. Point your thumb pointed straight out. The first move is gonna be up, across. Keep that thumb pointed out as long as you can. When you get to that ear, start to rotate that bicep in. That thumb will come forward, then reach that arm behind. We're gonna keep that rotation going till we get to that pocket. Now that thumb should be pointed behind us. Reverse that direction, you'll feel a block. Then we start to unrotate or unravel and just retrace our steps. We're gonna do this one for 60 seconds. So we're gonna keep going back and forth from forward to back to forward for 60 seconds, trying to accrue as many quality reps as we possibly can. Remember, we're looking for quality, not quantity here. 1 mile per hour, lock that rib cage in, thinking about creating as much of a circle as you possibly can. Excellent work. Keep it going. And let's finish this rep that we're currently on, and then we'll flip to the other side. Now we're gonna go right side, thumb pointed out, bring it all the way to your ear, bring that arm all the way back, reverse direction, 1 mile per hour here. Thinking about tick-tocking forward and back to forward. As you get to those like sticky parts, the top of the shoulder, that extended position of the shoulder, or when the arm's pointed back, create as much tension throughout your body is the concept called irradiation, meaning that we're trying to create tension or stability to access more range in a particular joint. This is a really important concept to start to establish during CARs, that concept of irradiation, to access more range and get more out of the actual exercise. PAILs and rails, even breathing. The more we can focus on locking in certain joints, it's a concept called centration, of locking in a joint to create more stability and more output. Same concept with the radiation. Create more stability throughout your body, create this almost Valsalva type of mechanism. Let's finish this rep that we're currently on. We're gonna move on to elbow. So thumbs pointed out, we're gonna flex at the elbow, get all the way up to your bicep hitting your forearm, rotate your thumbs inward, come on back down, reverse direction. We're gonna just tick-tock back and forth in this pronated to supinated, AKA holding soup, dumping the soup, for 3 reps here, not necessarily for time. Awesome. Once you finish with 3 reps, we'll bring your hands up to 90 or elbows up to 90 degrees, palm in a supinated position. Close your fist. Let's bring your fist down towards the ground, and we're going to make a clockwise circle for 3 reps. And then a counterclockwise circle for 3 reps. We're going to move into hip. If you need something stable, like a wall or even a chair, by all means, please grab one. We're going to work on hip, and the more balance and stability we have, the more range we'll have. We're going to do the same thing we did on hip as we did shoulder. So whatever leg, inside arm's going to be holding. Let's bring that knee all the way up towards your chest, as high as you can. Rotate that shin inward. Pull that knee out wide, reach that heel behind, keeping your torso nice and tall, circulating back and forth for 60 reps. This one's gonna bring more attention to creating stability. So as I bring that knee out and I rotate that heel behind, that torso is gonna wanna dump the opposite way. That's creating space. And you'll notice that position when we get into our flexibility work, AKA PAILs and rails. And this is trying to create space that my hip doesn't have. So I'm going to dump my torso away to give myself the perception of having space in that joint, where I'm literally just trying to find a way to compensate in that direction. So fight that now. Create this active range of motion as you're going through that hip. So knee up, rotate, bring that heel behind you, keeping that torso nice and tall and rigid, almost stoic, and then bring it around. Finish the rep that you're currently on, and we'll flip to the other side. Bring that knee up, rotate, heel behind you. Awesome. We're going to tick-tock back and forth here for 60 seconds, keeping your torso rigid, stance leg strong. Use that inside hand to give you more stability. Irradiate is that term. Create tension through your body so we can get more from that targeted joint action. Knee up, knee out, rotate, pull that heel back in. We're just going to tick-tock back and forth, 60 seconds here, thinking about getting as many quality reps as you can. That sticky part, create tension. Again, these high volume sets, these elongated sets, 60 seconds, you'll feel some kind of tension, some sort of crampy sensation, fight through. Okay, now we're going to go back down to knee. Same thing as elbow. We're going to do this for reps. Knee and elbow are same joint. Ankle and wrist are same joint. Hip and shoulder are same joint. So we're going to train them exact same from top to bottom. All right, so heel pulled in towards your hamstring. Rotate your knee out. So now where heel is pointed in and that toe is pointed out. Extend the knee. Pull that heel back in. Rotate that shin pointed in. So heel's pointed out. Extend, back in. We're just going to tick-tock back and forth here for 3 reps. Once you're done with 3 here, we'll lock out the leg. We're going to lock out that knee because once we start to move that ankle, the more that knee is flexed, the more that shin can move, or that tibia. That can alter the range of motion or perception, again, a compensation. So lock that knee out, create centration in that knee, point that toe towards your shin, heel in, toe in, make a circle clockwise for 3 reps. Feel all that tension and counterclockwise. Try to move through as full circle as possible. Perfect. Let's go to the other side. Pull that heel in, rotate that shin out. So toes pointed out, heels pointed in. Pull that heel back in, reverse. We're going to go 3 each way there. And then we'll go ahead and lock that leg out. Make a clockwise to counterclockwise circle. Perfect. Now, we're going to go on to toe here. So in toe, feet are going to be hip width apart. Thinking about all 5 toes are in contact with the ground. You should be able to feel the ground. This is the biggest proprioceptive organ we probably have that we're not using, meaning that the more I can feel the ground, the more I can use all 5 of my toes, the better strength from the foot up I'll have. So let's go ahead and increase the range, increase the stability, increase the function of your feet by learning how to re-educate them by moving them. All right, so let's go ahead. 5 toes are in contact with the ground. Pick your big toe up as high as you can and hold. So big toe is now elevated, 4 little toes are staying. Place that big toe back down on the ground. Let's repeat that again. Big toe back up and back down. Let's do one more. Big toe up and back down. Now, big toe is going to stay on the ground. Now we're going to lift our 4 little toes up. So big toe down, 4 little up, back down. Big toe down, 4 little up, back down. Big toe down, 4 little up. Great. Now let's lift all 5 toes up off the ground. So now my 5 digits are away from the ground. My whole heel and base of my foot is on the ground. Touch your big toe down. Back up, down, back up, down, back up. Now what we're gonna do is spread our toes as wide as we can, and we're gonna try to touch from our pinky toe down to our big toe, one toe at a time, like we're piano keying down. So pinky toe first, second, third, fourth, and then big toe. All 5 toes back up. Second, third, fourth, fifth, big toe back down up. And then we're up again. Spread, pinky down to big toe. Awesome. We got one more drill. Let's get into an all fours position. So our base position for quadruped, hands and knees. Not just hands and knees, but shoulders stacked over wrist, hips stacked over knees. From here, we're gonna go through cat camel. Thinking one segment at a time. So pull your head up. So now I'm in cervical extension. Bring my chin down and then push my upper back towards the ceiling. Trying to pull each one of my vertebrae up, 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 and then you'll get to your tailbone. Tailbone will dump behind and down. Now from here, start at the tailbone, and then one segment at a time, bring each one of your vertebrae close to the ground, get towards your neck, and then elevate that neck again, and then we're just gonna snake back down. And then back up, back down, and back up. Awesome. Now we're going to go into a second position. So we're going to bring our hips back towards our heels. So I'm in this now collapsed position. And what this is doing is taking this lumbar out of the equation, right? So now my lumbar is completely locked in. So now what I've done is create that centrated effect or that locked joint effect. And now I'm gonna have to get more range from somewhere else, which will come from the upper back, aka the thoracic spine. So we're just gonna go through the same movement. Start off with extended, bring that chin down, so now I'm flexed. One segment at a time, pushing my vertebrae up and back. Go till you feel a block, and then reverse direction. And we're just going to snake up and down, almost like a slinky going down the stairs. One vertebrae moving at a time, trying to create a smooth, gradual transition up and down. We'll go one more rep. And then we'll transition forward. Then we're going to get down to our elbows. So now we're going to block our upper back, and now we're going to focus on our lumbar. So extended, flex. Push as much of your vertebrae as you can towards the sky. And now we'll get down to that tailbone. Reverse all the way back up. 3 up. 3 down. Awesome. Got That is all. That's fine. Get a drink, whatever you need. But the idea is now is to try to create this passive range of motion or flexibility within hip and shoulder. We like to focus on those 2 joints because those are primarily the joints that we're going to be stressing a lot in our big movement patterns like squat, bench, pull up, and RDL or hinge pattern, right? Those are the ones that we're going to use predominantly in our what we call our A series, our primaries. So as we're going through anything from a corrective or a flexibility mobility continuum, it's to really facilitate those movement patterns. Can I train through a larger range of motion so I can get more bang for my buck, get more compounding interest from the time I'm putting into the weight room, as well as can I get a little bit more performance? Can I use a little bit more weight? Can I move it faster? Can I move it longer? And then can I recover faster, right? If I'm fighting myself every single rep, it's going to be very stressful on not only my joints, but also to my central nervous system. So if I can get better range of motion just by focusing on hip and shoulder, specifically internal and external rotation, we should be able to get overall better performance, better execution, and hopefully better recovery. So let's go ahead, let's hit these pails and rails, and then we're going to transition into some breathing. All right, so first up, we're going to get into a 90-90 position. So we've got 2 directions we want to work, external and internal rotation. For external rotation, we're going to focus on the front leg. So the way we want to set up this stretch is get a 90-90 position. So 90-degree front knee, 90-degree back knee. Then from here, I'm going to turn my torso in front of that upper leg thigh. I want to pull my torso up, descend down, get into almost a hingy type position. You'll feel a slight stretch in that glute. It's really important that we don't lose that spinal position, that we have a long, rigid spine, and we bring our torso down just like we would in a hinge pattern. You're gonna feel a slight stretch in that front leg's glute, and we're gonna hold this here for 2 minutes. Now, if you have a lot of range of motion here, meaning that I'm not really feeling anything, you can grab a yoga block or towel and place that underneath your foot. If you feel the stretch, that's fine. Whatever you feel comfortable with. We're gonna hold this here for 2 minutes. This is a really important first phase of this PAILs and rails. It's what we call setting up the stretch. That the more time we can spend in these positions, the more my body gets accustomed to it, and we downturn that central nervous system, which is gonna try to block us from being in that range. In fact, when we get to those PAILs and rails, if you feel that crampy sensation, that probably means that we don't have a lot of passive range of motion or a lot of flexibility. So as we get deeper into these positions, the more I can set the stretch up, the more I can facilitate hopefully getting into deeper passive range. And that's our potential. Because if I can't get there passively, I won't be able to get there actively. So if as I start to pull that leg up, that would be our active, or what we do in our cars. Now, where that actually manifests is when I do these workouts and I'm going through a squat pattern or a hinge pattern, and I realize I don't have a lot of active range of motion, but even further step up, I don't have a lot of passive range of motion. So if I don't have passive, I won't have active, and if I don't have active, I won't be able to do these patterns the way I want. We're just over a minute here. We're gonna get into what we call our PAILs, and that's just a fancy acronym for progressive angular isometric loading. So what that's gonna be is from the knee down to the foot, I'm gonna start to drive. So imagine this upper leg from my knee to my hip is rotating down. So I'm pulling that foot down into the ground. I'm gonna put more and more pressure into the ground. I'm gonna work up to 100% intensity, and that's just ramping the stretch. Once I get to that 100% intensity, we're gonna hold that for 10 seconds. Now, what we're gonna do from there is immediately transition from that PAILs into a rails, which would be a regressive angular isometric loading. So I'll trap the knee, lift the foot and shin, and then I'll hold that for 10 seconds. Now, at the end of that 10 seconds, if I create separation from the ground, I want to bring my body down to the ground, not my foot. And I'll show you what that looks like. It's either gonna look like this or this, getting deeper into that stretch. We want to set into the stretch, access that newfound range of motion, and follow that leg with my body so I can get more external rotation. So let's go ahead, let's take a deep breath in, pack the air down like we're bracing for a punch. Remember we talked about that in cars, or radiate. Start to drive from the knee down to the foot into the ground, about 20% of your strength. We're gonna slowly ramp up to 40%, so a little bit more pressure into the ground, ramp up to 60%. Now ramp up to 80, so a little bit more pressure. If you feel pain, this is where you're gonna stop, even may take a little bit of threshold off. Now ramp up even more to 100%. Your safest, greatest effort, and we're gonna hold this here for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Trap that front knee against the ground. Try to lift that foot and shin as high as you can. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and parachute down. Sit deeper into the stretch. Remember, bring your body down into the ground. We're gonna hold this here for another minute, and we're gonna do another round of PAILs and rails. So we'll hold this here, and we'll get set up for another round of PAILs and rails, hopefully getting a little bit more range. We are deeper into the stretch if we followed that leg with our body. So now when we go into PAILs, you'll feel a little bit more tension. When you go into rails, you'll feel a little bit more crampy sensation. So we just eased into that stretch. Now we're gonna try to get to that quote unquote deeper end range so we can get a little bit more external rotation than we started. And that's all we're doing. We're just chipping away at this. We're trying to create change over time. It's just the same thing as building muscles, the same thing as gaining strength. Flexibility, mobility is just frequency, intensity, volume, duration. It's the same variables, just focusing a different attribute of performance. All right, let's go ahead, take a deep breath in, pack the air down, start to drive from the knee down to the foot into the ground, 20% of your strength. Ramp up to 40%, 60%, 80%. Now your safest, greatest effort, and hold here for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and reverse. Lift that foot and shin, trapping the knee. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Follow that foot with your body. Get deeper into the stretch. We got another minute here, and then we're going to transition actually to internal rotation on the back leg. So now you'll feel a little bit more fatigue. We are using our nervous system. We are using our muscular system. Hopefully we have a little bit more range in that hip. And what we'll do in the end is do some breathing, and that will hopefully reset that parasympathetic nervous system. All right, another 30 seconds here. Relax your breath. Try to focus on in through the nose, out through the mouth. That's always something you have control over, right? You can control your breath as we're creating tension, as we're going through longer durations, whatever it is that we're doing. Breath is the one thing you probably have more physical control over than anything. So as you get to these points of duress or stress or threshold, is you want to focus on your breath. And probably the best manner to breathing would be in through the nose for a very slow and deep inhalation, and then a very controlled exhalation through the mouth. And what that will do is activate the diaphragm and more of this parasympathetic tone. All right, slowly move from that position. Shake that leg out if you need to. We're gonna go ahead and make our way to the back leg. Now we're gonna work hip internal rotation. So we'll posture up and we'll rotate. Remember, we're gonna set the stretch. From here, you're not gonna collapse down. You're just gonna try to rotate facing the back leg. Now, if you feel a really good stretch, you're gonna stay right here. Now, if you don't feel much, you can grab that yoga block or towel, place it under the back of your foot. All right, so now it's underneath that ankle, and I'll place it into that deeper internal rotated position. Same setup as we did before. We're gonna work 2-minute stretch and then hit PAILs and rails. Now, this is a good segment to talk about why we focus on external versus internal. For a lot of our pressing patterns, so squats and bench, you'll see a big limitation in terms of internal rotation of the hip and shoulder. Whatever that hip is doing from that pelvis through that femur is going to react from the ground up from the top bottom. So my thorax or my ribs and my sternum and that foot interacting with the ground all the way up to that pelvis. And that pelvis just reacts to both. So as I'm starting to orient my torso in space, as I start to put that foot in the ground, the pelvis essentially is this bowl that is a gyroscope, so to speak, to balance us out, relatively speaking, between the upper and lower quadrants. Now, whatever happens in that pelvis impacts what position that femur is going to be in. So as I go into this squat pattern, that pelvis is going to want to anteriorly rotate because my sternum's lifting and I get into this extended position. But what that will do is block internal rotation of my back on my femur. And why we want to improve internal rotation is that natural anterior tilt, or that dumping forward, is going to allow for more range to sit deeper into our squats and split squats. That is why we like to focus on internal rotation. Now invert that external rotation for our hip hinge patterns. This is why it's so important to develop this internal external rotation to really get the most from those movements. So we're about 30 seconds left in this stretch. We're gonna go into PAILs and rails. So same thing we did in the front leg where you're doing the back leg. Trap the back knee into the ground, drive that foot and shin into the ground. We'll ramp up to 100%, hold that for 10. Once we're done with that PAILs, we'll trap that knee, lift the foot and shin, and we'll hold that for 10. Now at the end of that, make sure if we create any separation, we're trying to sit deeper into that stretch by rotating more towards the back leg. If you don't feel much of a stretch, remember, use your yoga block or towel. Let's take a deep breath in, pack the air down, start to drive that back foot and shin into the ground. 20% of your strength, 40%, 60%, now 80, ramping up here to 100%, your safest, greatest effort, and hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, trap that knee, lift that foot and shin without rotating, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and relax. You may have felt a crampy sensation. This is a harder position than probably the front leg, because technically I'm adducted or pulled that leg towards the midline. This one I'm abducted, meaning I'm pulling that foot away from the mid, or that knee away from the midline. And what it is a more of a challenge of position, not on just that hip, but also to the internal rotators of that hip. And what we did in cars, remember we talked about it from creating tension throughout your body. We talked about staying more stable. That's going to get a little bit more abduction. So if you imagine me standing, this foot on the ground, this leg going through space, this is the exact same position of that knee abducted or wide and that heel pulled up behind me, or that shin lifted up behind me. And if you remember, that torso wanted to dump away, you fought it by pushing against the wall or something sturdy. Same thing here. We want to create tension in our torso, that irradiating effect. So when I do get to that end range of abduction and that end range of internal rotation, I'm not compensating by leaning away. And this is how we get more, right? That intensity, that focus, that intent. That's how we're going to get more range of motion into that hip internal rotation, and that's how we're going to get more from the stretch. Let's gear up again for another round of pails and rails. Breath in, pack it down, start to drive from the foot to the knee down to the ground, 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%, safest, greatest effort, and hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, trap the knee, lift the foot, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and parachute down, turn more into that leg. If you felt a lot of cramp in that sensation, it's okay to get out of that stretch. Just move that leg around, just try to get back into it. That just means you're getting to that end range, that passive end range, whatever that nervous system's not accustomed to, it's going to try to get out of. You're now just overriding that predetermined range and getting more accessible range in that hip capsule. All right, another 15 seconds, and then we're going to flip and go to the other side, work hip external rotation now on this back leg, and then internal rotation on that next back leg. Okay, slowly transition from that leg. Let's shake that leg out, shake this leg out. If you need a drink of water, pause, just go ahead, get yourself set up on that. We're gonna move into that. If you were using your yoga block or towel, just have that handy so you can grab that easily. Now we'll go back to this front leg. We're gonna set up, now stacked over this front leg here, torso long, pull that body down to the ground just like we would in a hinge pattern, and then we're gonna keep this pressure from this knee down to that foot, working hip external rotation. And we'll just repeat what we did on the front side, on the other side, external rotation, 2 rounds, internal rotation, pails and rails, 2 rounds, and then we'll move on to shoulder. All right, so in this position, you should feel a slight stretch in that glute. You should feel a little bit of fatigue at this point. Hopefully not a whole lot, especially if you've been doing pails and rails for the past couple, I guess, years with us. If you're new to this, you might feel a lot of fatigue. There is a learning curve. Try not to beat yourself up if you don't really feel just what we're doing for you yet. It just comes down to anchoring your body, creating stability. You know, I know there's a lot of element of doing this remotely and like, I don't really know what he's talking about. It's like everything. The more experience you get to it, the more that you get a little bit more familiarity with the feeling, the terminology, the positions you need to be, oh, okay, now I feel I'm getting more range, right? And it's gonna be a slow build, but frequency, the more times you do this, the more consistency you have with this, the more bang for your buck you'll get from it, which I know it's hard, but like anything worth having, you gotta put some work in to actually get. So that's the whole point of all this, is to give you some options where you can do this on a more recurring basis. You can do this more on your schedule, hopefully facilitate the recovery aspect, hopefully facilitate all the other aspects of getting more value from doing our movement patterns with squat, push, pull, and hinge in a workout. All right, 15 seconds, we'll get set up for pails and rails. Remember, from the knee down to the foot, we're ramping up to 100%. Hold that for 10, trap the knee down, lift that foot and shin up, hold that for 10, and then we'll bring our whole body down with the leg. Breath in, pack it down, start to drive from the knee down to the foot, 20% of your strength, 40%, 60%, 80. Now your safest, greatest for hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, trap the knee, lift the foot and chin. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and parachute down. Bring that leg down. Hold that for 10. Hold that for another minute, and then we'll go for another round of pails and rails. Remember, control your breath, whatever it is that you have, whatever it is that you're feeling in terms of fatigue or crampiness or just generally losing track of what's going on, losing focus, just get right back to your breath. Remember, your breath is your way to center yourself. Your breath is the way to control whatever it is that's going on around you. That is the one thing that you can actually tangibly do at any given moment. So it's always going to be your stabilization point, your foundational point. In through the nose, out through the mouth, under control. Try to fill up that whole entire lung by activating that diaphragm. Let's take a deep breath in. Let's pack the air down. Start to drive from the knee down to the foot again into the ground, 20% of your strength. 40%, 60%, 80%. Now your safest, greatest effort and hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and trap the knee, lift the foot and chin, and hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and parachute down. Hold that for another minute. Great work. Hip external rotation is done for the day. We just got some hip internal rotation, and then we'll move into the shoulder. All right, another 30 seconds, and then we'll transition into that back leg. All right, so we're getting almost to the halfway point here. The biggest thing now is just making sure that you're staying locked in. We do want to focus on both legs, so if we can get equal effort, equal intent, equal intensity on both the right and left leg, both external and internal rotation, the better effect we're going to get. Now, if you're going to do this again, if this could be your second or third time doing it, try to make a mental note of, okay, I started with my left leg forward, right leg back, and then I'm going to flip to the other side. I'm going to go with my right leg forward and left leg back this next time, if you can. That will help. All right, slowly move from that position. We're going to posture up, and we're going to now turn towards the back leg. So I rotate now towards the back leg, posture is tall. You should feel a slight stretch in that groin adductor, and then maybe somewhere in this upper inner part of the thigh, those are the internal rotators. We're just now focusing on our breath, trying to set that stretch. Fatigue is going to happen here, so what we want to do is fight and push, scratch and crawl to try to get as much out of that internal rotation in that back leg as you can. So just control that breath, try to get that stretch set up. After we're done with internal rotation, we'll get into a prone or a sideline position, and we're going to work shoulder. And we're just going to go through internal and external rotation there as well. Try to relax into these positions as much as you can. Set up this stretch as best you can. We are going through a pretty challenging block in both team and strength right now. We have a wave loading protocol, and then we have a simple 5x5 protocol. Both of them are going to bring their own thing to the equation. So as you're going through this in terms of the volume or the intensity of which you're working with, the thing that you should always prioritize is your ability to go up each week. And that might mean, hey, I got to get more time vested into flexibility and mobility. So every single time you're doing one of these sessions, try to think about how this plays into the bigger picture, right? If I'm feeling beat up, broken down, if I feel like I'm not getting full range of motion, a lot of my movements, your best asset is going to be trying to get this in on a weekly basis to keep those joints moving well. Remember, you only get one of them. You only get one body in your life, so you might as well take care of all the factors and not be reactive, but proactive with setting up for the best bang for your buck for these movements. All right, we're at 2 minutes here. We're going to drive this knee down into the ground. From the knee into the foot, we're going to start to ramp up, rotating at that upper leg, working up to 100%. Hold that for 10. We'll trap the knee, and then we'll lift the foot and chin, and we'll go deeper into that internal rotation for our rails. Let's take a deep breath in, pack it down, start to drive from the knee down to the foot into the ground, 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%. Remember, this might feel a little bit more crampy early, so you find your upper limit, safest, greatest, and hold. From the knee down to the foot, we're driving it to the ground for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Trap the knee, lift the foot. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and relax. Now we'll go ahead, get deeper into the stretch by posturing up, rotating towards the back leg, and we'll hold this for another minute. And we're gonna rinse, wash, and repeat. Do one more round of pails and rails. Do a minute hold at the end of that, and then move on to shoulder. Control that breath, control that breath, control that breath. Make sure that you are, I know it's probably one of those ones you don't feel, it feels counterintuitive to drink plenty of water, which is always going to be one of the ones that's probably easy overlooked, but so important. Even in the sessions like this, we're contracting, we're relaxing. Body's just an electrical conductor. So if we have more of water, which is a great conductor of electricity, the better we're going to function. That nervous system's going to function. So stay hydrated. If you're doing this in the morning, try to get some water in beforehand. All right, guys, let's go ahead and set up for some pails and rails. Breath in, pack it down from the knee down to the foot, driving down to the ground, 20% of your strength, 40%, 60%, 80%. Now you're going to hit your safest, greatest effort and hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, trap the knee, lift the foot, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, parachute down, turn your torso, sit deeper into the stretch by getting taller and rotating back. Minute here, and then we'll get set up for shoulder, actually internal rotation. Control that breath, finish strong. Try not to bail out of that stretch, right? When we get to that end of that rails, it's so tempting just to fall forward and just go, okay, now I'm gonna take a break. That's when the actual real magic happens. That's when the actual change occurs. When I get to that rails or regressive angle and I get to a deeper range actively, I want to facilitate the more plastic or permanent changes in that hip by getting deeper into that passive range of motion and holding it. That's where the actual real change occurs. Whatever architecture going on in the hip, it's just like chiseling away at steel. You have to take your time. You have to constantly beat at it. You have to stay persistent. You got to really work at it. Don't lose sight of the reason why we're doing this is to get more passive range. We're going to utilize active range of motion, but the more passive we get, the better effect we'll have because that raises the bar for potential. Let's slowly move from that position. If you need to pause, get yourself a quick drink. Completely fine. All right, let's get into shoulder internal rotation. I like to have this available for a pillow. You can use a towel, whatever you need, but we're gonna go a side lying position. So I'll set this up right here. I'm gonna be facing you guys the whole time so you guys see me. Now, pillow underneath my head, and then I'm gonna take my bottom arm, set it up right in line with my shoulder. Not necessarily above the height of my shoulder, not super below, but more around right in line. If I have like a little bit of gap from the top of my shoulder to bottom elbow, that's fine. But what we're going to do is internal rotation. A lot of times when we're too out wide here, you're not really going to have much ability to create torque. And if you're too here, you're going to get this artificial type of range of motion that I'm moving a lot. The other note here for internal rotation is this 90-degree bend of the elbow, right? So sometimes when we see folks do this, they start to extend, they're like, I don't really feel it. Here, we want to get a 90-degree bend. So imagine that there's this angle here, just like the corner of a wall. And then from here, the knuckle goes from pointed straight up to as horizontal as we can. When I get to that end range, what we're going to do is set up for our stretch by taking our top hand, placing it on top of the wrist. You'll feel a slight amount of tension or stretch in the back part of your shoulder. Now, if you feel pain at all, slowly move out of that stretch and just find a good, comfortable end range and hold this position there. The idea now, just like hip internal rotation, is we're in this adducted position of the shoulder. So my torso's forward. And now I'm gonna have a little bit more of an effect of internal rotation as opposed to just lying back and now I'm more quote unquote abducted. So it's almost the opposite direction, but the same type of setup. All about how we get that shoulder into an ab or adducted position makes all the difference in the world. So for hip, we work abducted and internal rotated, and for shoulder, we'll work adducted and internal rotated to get more of that desired effect for that shoulder. It just puts that shoulder in a more challenging position, and then when we go into internal rotation, it makes it a little bit more challenging as well to hopefully get a little bit more bang for your buck as we're doing these stretches. We're gonna do one round of pails and rails on each side of the shoulder and shoulder. If you wanted to do a second round, just pause, get a minute break, and then do another round of pails and rails, especially if you feel like this is a limiting factor for doing things like bench press. So if you go down on Nutri-Grip bench and you can't get all the way elbows down closer to the floor or knuckles in line with your rib cage, this is a good one to kind of work a little bit more range in that position. Especially stuff like push-ups. You see a lot of folks who struggle to get their torso all the way down to the ground, whether it's a strength thing or it could be a range of motion thing. As we're developing strength, probably a little bit more attainable early to develop range of motion, at least rule that out as a limiting factor. So for pails and rails, I'm gonna drive my bottom arm up into my top hand. So now I'm making more of a progressive angle. This is a little bit more visible in terms of progressive or regressive, right? So I'm trying to pull my arm away, blocking it with my top hand. And then from here, rails, I'm gonna make a more of a regressive angle, close that angle between my forearm and the ground, pulling my arm to the ground. We'll do the same setup, ramp up to 100%, hold that PAILs safest, greatest effort for 10, and then from here, I'll drive that arm down towards the ground, hold that rails, and remember, I wanna get into that deeper end range, so I'll bring my top hand to my bottom hand, and we'll hold that for another minute. So let's take a deep breath in, pack the air down, start to drive that arm down or up into that top hand, 20%. Ramp up to 40, ramp up to 60, ramp up to 80. Now your safest, greatest, and hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Reverse by pulling your arm away from the top hand towards the bottom, towards the ground. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Bring that top hand down to wherever the bottom hand is, and we'll hold here for another minute. If you feel pain at all, just pull a little bit out of that stretch. Just find a more comfortable, quote unquote, end range for you today. Pain or actual physical range is gonna be your end range, right? If I feel pain, that's past your end range. If I feel like I'm going past the blocky segment, a bony segment, and I'm having to adjust my body or compensate in any way, that's your end range. You just find a position that you can get to safely, comfortably, without compromise, and that's your determined end range. And the idea is to try to get to that end range, hold it for an elongated period of time to create change in that shoulder or that hip, and then do it again and try to get further and get further and get further and get further until we get this stuff really applying to our movement patterns. Then I have more potential in my joint, and then I have more potential for my movement patterns, and the more potential I have from my movement patterns, the more value I get from those movement patterns. All right, slowly move from that position. We're gonna go ahead and flip to the other side. Again, if you wanted to pause the video, do another round of that, we're just gonna ramp up to the 100%, hold that for 10, and then reverse, rails for 10, and then go to the other side. All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and set up now, same setup. So elbow at 90, in line with the shoulder, bring that arm down to the ground, block with the top hand, and then we'll hold here for 2. Try to relax that breath, try to get comfortable in both these positions. You'll notice definitively you'll have a difference of internal, external rotation depending on the side. The orientation of our body is naturally asymmetrical, so the left side is always going to be different than the right side. It comes from the size where our organs are situated, from left side heart, right side liver. Lungs and diaphragm are different sizes. Hips and pelvises are different orientation. Everything's naturally going to be asymmetrical. So as you start to really dive into internal, external rotation of the hip and shoulder, you'll notice one side has a little bit more available range or a little bit more comfort in certain positions than others. And this is why we do so much stuff in a unilateral focus, is because we need to address that asymmetry, because a lot of the movement patterns we're going to do are going to be bilateral in nature, right? With a barbell or a trap bar or 2 dumbbells or 2 kettlebells. And we do that for 2 reasons. One, we have a higher potential to use more external load because we create this leveraging and stability effect from a bilateral movement. And that gets us this second aspect of, okay, we probably can get a little bit more work, a little bit more force, a little bit more velocity, but at the expense of putting torque on an asymmetrical orientation of the body. We need more unilateral things to restore that, and we need more unilateral things to support that. And that's why we have such a really big, strong foundation of unilateral corrective work, unilateral flexibility, mobility work, unilateral strength work, because that just creates this foundation of, okay, I'm going to do a lot of bilateral movement, but I understand that the body's naturally asymmetrically, so I can get more value from those bilateral movements as well as keep myself safer longer. All right, guys, 2 minutes in, we're going to go into pails and rails. Let's take a deep breath in, pack the air down, start to drive that bottom arm up into the top arm, 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%. Now your safest, greatest, and hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and reverse. Bring that arm down towards the ground. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Take that top arm, place it back wherever the bottom arm is ended, and we'll hold here for another minute. All right. Try to relax in these positions. If you feel any bit of pain, pull out of that position, get to a more comfortable range. Don't force something that hurts. Another 15 seconds and we'll get set up here for external rotation. We'll need a yoga block or a towel here. If you don't have a towel or a yoga block, grab a couple books, something where you can prop your forearm up away from the ground. And slowly move from that position. If you need a quick drink, just pause it, go ahead, get yourself a quick drink. All right, so now we're gonna move into a prone or face down position. So we'll get our yoga block books or towel, place it on the ground to the side. Now for yoga block, which is nice, I can set this up 3 heights. I can go flat, I can go horizontal, or I can go vertical. Whatever comfortable position you'll see when we get into this position to get a little bit more challenge from the stretch. The same thing we talked about, that adducted position, we want a true abducted position. Now the more my elbows up here or more that elbows are extended, the more it'll actually give me a false sense of range of motion. We want a true abducted, so that arm is completely out to my side, and elbow at 90. So making sure that we have a 90-degree crease between my forearm and my upper arm makes all the difference in the world, because if we're going here and that arm's extended or it's lifted up, you're probably giving yourself a false sense of range. We want to really challenge the range we have. For a lot of people, probably this height will be very good. But for a lot of us getting started out, if we want to go here, completely fine. As well as too, be cognizant of you're going to have differences from right to left. So let's go ahead. Let's make our way to the ground. We're going to set up here with the yoga block underneath my wrist, elbow on the ground. So if you can see this, my elbow's on the ground and my forearm's lifted up just like such. From here, we'll rest the forearm down, and then we'll get into this abducted, externally rotated position. This will help out with things like pull-ups and rows. All right, so once we're here, we're going to relax in this position. If you feel like I can lift my arm up about 2 to 3 inches, just adjust the height, making sure though that your wrist is on there, not your hand, because what that is basically wrist extension, not shoulder external rotation. So if you feel comfortable here, if you can't lift that much, stay right here, right? No one's watching, you're by yourself at home more than likely, so think about whatever is going to give you the most bang for your buck is end range of abducted shoulder and external rotation of the shoulder. From here, just relax into the ground. This is a prone position, so this is a great opportunity to work. Inhale, so as you breathe in, you want to recruit as much of that diaphragm as you can. So expand as much of that shirt into the ground as you can. So as you come up, I should see your back elevate from the ground. When you should come down, your whole body should sink into the ground. That's you recruiting your diaphragm, trying to get as much of that lung filled up, getting into that parasympathetic tone. This will be one of our 3 positions that we'll use during our breathing. And if you feel really good here, if you feel like this is a very relaxing spot for you, completely fine to go here for our breathing. But it's also a good opportunity to kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, work on your breathing while you're here. So we're going to work shoulder external rotation. On the PAILs, we're going to drive my whole arm from my elbow down to my top of my knuckles into the ground, ramping up to 100%. Hold that for 10. At the end of that 10, we're going to trap our elbow. So I'm going to lock my elbow into the ground, and I'm going to lift my forearm away. Now, when I'm done with that PAILs, or that rails, we have 2 options. I can slide this yoga block to wedge a little bit closer to my elbow to create more external rotation, or I can change the height. If you don't have a yoga block, completely fine. Just go ahead a little bit more of a wedge position for that elevated wrist or forearm so you can get deeper in external rotation. Let's take a deep breath in, pack the air down, start to drive your forearm down into the ground about 20% of your strength. 40%, 60%, 80%. Let's go. Safest, greatest effort, and hold there for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and relax. Lift your forearm and wrist away. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and relax. Now, see what I did there? I wedged a little bit closer to my elbow. So now I'm deeper into external rotation. I feel a little crampy sensation here, but I've been doing this enough where I feel comfortable with it. If you feel like, oh my God, I got to get out of this position, do it. Just do it. Get out of the position, get more comfortable, get into a position where you feel like you're going to get value from the stretch. Just every time you do it, try to get a little bit more comfortable at this quote unquote end range, and over time it'll be better. Very simple, very simple. The more you do something, the more you get from it. I know that comes off as, hey, just a shameless plug to get you doing this more. But if it leads you getting to better performance, better recovery, and being safer over a longer period of time, I would gladly take that. I'd take that every single time. Because the goal is to facilitate you getting the most value from our workouts. And that comes down to doing the right things at the right time, at the right amount. And if we can get that over time, great. Let's slowly move from that position. Let's switch to the other side. You'll notice that, again, you'll have difference from left to right. So if my right side is a little bit more mobile than my left, or vice versa, just to move this around. Find that position where you feel like you can get a really good stretch on that shoulder, built off upon what that shoulder is capable of. So 2-minute stretch here. Remember, focus on your breath. Try to get your body in a position where you can create torque. Try to get your breath in a position where you have comfort. Try to set up and finish. Fatigue is real, so if you feel like you're losing focus, if you feel like I'm getting really boring or very redundant, control that breath. Control that breath. You always have control of your breath. You can't control what I'm saying, but you can control how you breathe. I guarantee that, especially as you're going through work. And the more you can control that, right, this idea of I am in the moment, I am present, really just all about controlling your breath, right? Like the idea of meditation is just about leveraging what you have control over. Quiet's a real place, but if you can do that in a stressful environment like a weight room playing Allegiant Sick playlist, the best playlist in all of Los Angeles, bar none. Anyone who disagrees with that just doesn't understand good quality music and curating a playlist that's built for performance. But if you can control your breath while that sick Allegiant playlist going through an aggressive protocol with 17 other people going for it, you've mastered the art of controlling yourself. Isn't that the point of meditation? Isn't that the point of having any bit of focus on being present and in the moment? And that's the thing that's often forgotten about what the benefit of strength training is, or consistency or routine is you build up a certain level of awareness and appreciation for the moment you're in and what you have control over. And a lot of it stems from a fractal relationship with controlling your breath in something like this, all the way to a rep in a corrective exercise all the way to a rep in a really high threshold set of 8, working up to a maximal weight. It's all the same. Control your breath, control yourself, get the most value from everything you're doing. Be present. All right, enough rambling. Let's get this pails and rails. Take a deep breath in, pack the air down, start to drive your forearm down into that yoga block, towel, or book. 20% of your strength, 40%, 60%, 80%, safest, greatest, and hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and reverse. Lift that forearm and wrist away and hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, wedge a little bit closer. Hold that here for another minute. If you feel crampy, completely fine, move out of there. Fight to make sure that you're getting that value from the stretch by getting into that end range and holding right there. Beautiful work today, guys. This is our last stretch of the day. We're going to finish up with some breathing after this. And if you guys want to cut it here, you got a lot of value, but I implore you to finish strong. And slowly move from that position. Great work, everybody. So that covers our flexibility or mobility, cars, pails, and rails. We're going to move on to some breathing, which is probably arguably the most valuable part of this, which, if you've been going through it, you've been controlling your breath the whole entire time. But we're going to get you into 3 base positions to go through breathing at a higher level. All right. Okay. So let's finish off with some breathing. We're going to go 3 positions to choose from. And the reason behind each position, it formats a different way for your body in space. So if my body is facing down, if my body is facing up, it's a different gravitational effect on that thorax, right? So if I'm pointing straight up and we have this negative pressure pulling air into our lungs from the diaphragm contracting, it's different when my torso is pointed down or an inverted position. Now we don't have negative pressure, we have the effect of gravity. So in a sense, I have to contract to inhale. We reverse it, we have to contract to exhale when we're inverted. And that goes into why we want to focus on inhale versus exhale, right? So in regards to the positions, if you really struggled with internal rotation, this one, if I was cramping a lot, I felt like I had nothing, you want to be inverted. And what that does is gets a little bit more of a bias towards exhalation, or that breathing out. And the position we want to do with that is going to be an inverted position. We want hips stacked over knees, just like we did in the CARS, multi-segmental spine. So hips stacked over knees, elbows on the ground. Now, the more I'm elevated in my knees, the more inverted I am. So we can grab a yoga block, we can place that underneath our knees just like such, and we can get more inverted. We can use books, we can use towels, we can have balance pads. Do that. But the more inverted you are, the more effect you have on challenging exhalation. So if you really struggled with that internal rotation of the hip, you want to focus on a exhale bias strategy, aka inversion. The second position, well, and I know this probably feels a little counterintuitive, but stick with me, is if you struggle with the external rotation with the legs in front, will be that crocodile position, just like we did in our prone shoulder external rotation. So I'm here. And what this is, instead, I know it feels like we're inverted still, but what this is instead is now I give myself some sort of resistance when I inhale. So exhalation for internal rotation, inhalation for external rotation limitation. So now I'm going to bias inhalation or breathing in because I'm giving myself resistance. So as I breathe in through the nose, I'm going to have to push my body away and I have to contract. I have to contract that diaphragm and I have to really pull that air in because I have some body weight resistance as I'm pushing it in. So crocodile if you struggle with external rotation. Now the final one would be a 90-90 with a internal rotation on the left side bias, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Where you want to focus on that, if you didn't really struggle with internal external rotation, but you might have felt the left side was a lot more restricted than the right side, specifically internal rotation wise, that's when you want to go a 90-90 internal rotation left side bias position. So what that will look like is I'm going to get a chair or a wall and set up with a 90-90 breathing position. I know that probably seems confusing because we did 90-90 for our position to stretch. But the truth is it's the same 90-90 degree, 90 degree, 90 degree, just kind of a different angle, I guess. So from here, my heels are resting on a chair. I am now relaxed in this position. I want to pull my knees there. If you have a towel or yoga block, we're going to squeeze that between our knees. Remember we talked about abduction? So same thing, adduction now. And then I'm going to try to pull my left heel out and then point my right knee straight back. From here, I'm going to pull my heels down onto the chair or the wall. And what that's going to do is activate my hamstrings and then get my pelvis from this anterior to more posterior position. And what that will do is bias that internal rotation on the left side, and it's going to challenge the diaphragm to breathe against that, like what we call left AIC position. Now, torso matters quite a bit here. Remember, the lungs are different sizes from left to right. The heart's on the left side, the liver's on the right side. So what I'll do is as I'm driving my left heel out, squeezing this yoga block between my knees, I'm going to take my left hand, place it on my ribs, and take my right hand, place it overhead. If you feel more comfortable just going inverted or crocodile, completely fine. But if you felt like, hey, I had a massive limitation on that left side during that hip internal rotation, that 90-90 position with the leg back, I really strongly suggest you go to that 90-90 position. Now, what we're going to do from here is pause, maybe play around with each one of those positions, and then figure out which one you're going to go from there. So if you need to stop right now, please do. Now we're going to go into the actual breathing cadence. So whatever position you are, we're going to go inverted, crocodile, or 90-90. We're going to go into this 4-4-4-8 or 4-4-8 fork tempo. So breathe in for 4, we'll hold for 4, we'll breathe out for 8, we'll hold out for 8. So I'll say 4-3-2-1, 4-3-2-1, 8-7-6-5, 4-3-2-1, 4-3-2-1, and we'll repeat. So we're going to find that position, and we're going to go through 10 cycles of that 4-4-8-4 tempo. All right, so whatever one you want to get into, let's go ahead and get into that now. So if I'm in a crocodile position, if I'm in an inverted position, or if I'm into this 90-90 position, let's go ahead and do so now. Get a couple breaths in that position just to kind of get comfortable. Remember, we're always going to breathe in through the nose. We're going to breathe out through the mouth. No matter what position we're in, whether it's inhale or exhale bias, it's still going to be controlled full air in through the nose, controlled pushing the air out exhalation. The imaginary breathing in through a straw is going to be kind of the metaphor we'll stick with. And we're going to do that for 10 repetitions, and I'll guide you through each one. All right, so let's get that position. We're now getting a couple breaths in. Let's start to get into this direction. So everyone breathe out. Now we're going to breathe in through the nose for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold that air in for 4, 3, 2, 1. Push the air out through the mouth for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold that air out for 4, 3, 2, 1. Repeat. Pull air in. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold for 4, 3, 2, 1. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold the air out for 4, 3, 2, 1. And repeat. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now continue on for 5 more cycles. Thinking about filling in as much of that air in. Keep breathing. So we should be now moving into that hold, that exhale. If you're getting to that inverted position, exhale will get progressively harder and harder. You'll start to maybe get a little bit of lightheaded. Control that breath. If you need to take a break, take a pause, get out of that position for a second. Do so. Try not to make yourself to the point of passing out. If you're in that crocodile position, you're going to really struggle potentially getting into that inhale or that breathing in. If you're in that 90-90 position, you'll find that left leg's going to want to move out of that position. You'll find you'll start to squirm. You'll start to contort. It'll be harder to pull down on your heels. It'll be harder to squeeze that yoga block towel or book. It'll just be harder, right? So that's the goal, is to try to maintain that tempo. 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's a great tempo to keep on your own. So if you ever need 5 breaths in a good position, anytime you need to do that, we'll get a huge amount of benefit. Getting 5 cycles of that, 3 cycles of that. All right, so we should just be wrapping up that final inhalation or that final exhalation, and we can slowly move from that position. All right, so that concludes our breathing. Really good strategy to help finish off. If you ever need to do that post-session, great aspect of getting a really good targeted effect. All right, we'll break here, and that concludes Stretch for today.